There's a common conception among PhD students to think that the literature review is about proving that they've read enough articles, enough theories, enough names that signal they belong in the room. And if you are capable, disciplined, and a little anxious, you can do that. You can read constantly. You can take immaculate notes. You can keep expanding the document until it feels heavy with citations. But none of that guarantees that your work is actually positioned. Because reading a lot is not the same as knowing where your work sits. And a literature review that never makes that move leaves your study floating, busy, competent, and oddly untethered. This is where a lot of PhD literature reviews quietly fail. And it's not because they're sloppy. It's because they never quite enter the conversation they think they're summarizing. I'm Nick. This is Dr. Cranky Pants Teaches, and if your literature review feels like an annotated bibliography with a lot of ambition, something is missing. And it is not another article. In PhD research, the literature review establishes where your work sits in relation to what is already known. Your audience is other scholars, and your obligation is to the field. And that obligation shapes what the literature review must accomplish. It needs to show that you understand how a field has framed key questions, which theories and methods have shaped prior work, where debates, tensions, and unresolved questions exist. This is what people are usually pointing to when they talk about gap logic. Now, let's slow that down, because gap logic does not mean finding something no one has studied. Most meaningful PhD work does not come from untouched territory. Gap logic means identifying a place where explanations are incomplete, assumptions have gone unexamined, perspectives have been limited, or conversations have stalled in predictable ways. The literature review helps you make that case, not by declaring a gap, but by showing it through synthesis. This is where scholarly conversations matter. Fields are not collections of isolated studies. They are ongoing conversations. People respond to one another. They extend ideas, they argue, they refine concepts and methods over time. And a PhD literature review demonstrates that you can trace those conversations, that you know who is talking to whom, and what questions keep resurfacing, and where your work might speak back. That is why organizing literature by ideas and theoretical frames is so important in PhD work. You are not just summarizing what exists, you are situating yourself within it. And that positioning work is also where theory comes into play. In PhD research, theory is not decorative. It provides explanatory power. It shapes how problems are defined, what counts as evidence, and what kind of claims can be made. A strong PhD literature review shows how theory has been used in the field and how your work relates to those uses. You may be extending a theory, or questioning it, or putting it into conversation with others. But you are not working without it. Theory is part of how you demonstrate contribution. Now, let's talk about exhaustivity, because this is where anxiety tends to flare up. In PhD work, exhaustivity matters, but not because reading everything is a moral virtue. It matters because your claims are accountable to a field. So when you say, this has not been examined in this way, or this perspective has been underrepresented, or this theory has been applied narrowly, you are making a field-level claim. And exhaustivity ensures that those claims are credible. It allows you to say with a fair amount of confidence that you have engaged the major conversations, not just the ones that were easiest to find. Exhaustivity supports legitimacy, not perfection, not omniscience, but sufficient engagement to make the positioning claims you're making responsibly. Here's an important clarification. Exhaustivity does not mean reading everything that exists. It means reading strategically across key conversations that define the field you are working in. That is why scope decisions matter so much in PhD literature reviews. You are not trying to know all the things. You are trying to know enough of the right things to make a contribution. If you ever feel stuck or overwhelmed in your literature review PhD work, this question can help reorient you. What field am I positioning myself in? And what conversations do I need to understand in order to enter it responsibly? And that question clarifies what belongs and what does not. Hold on to this, because in PhD work, literature reviews are about field positioning, gap logic, scholarly conversations, theory contribution, and responsible exhaustivity. All serve that purpose. So if this made the expectations of a PhD literature review feel a little clearer and a little less mysterious, that matters. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.